Welcome to the Take the North podcast on your free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. I am David Haugh from 670 The Score, the Mullen Haugh Show, Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune, and we are here. It is week 18. It has arrived, Dan, as promised. You wanted to cancel it, but it's here anyway. Bears Vikings on Sunday at Soldier Field. But you know what? The game in this crazy busy week on the NFL calendar almost seems somewhat inconsequential. But we will talk about the game. We've got a lot to get to because there's been so much else that has gone on this week at Halas Hall and in every NFL city.
Well, for the Bears, the game is inconsequential regardless of what happened elsewhere in the league this week because they're going to start Nathan Peterman on Sunday against the Vikings, and there's a possibility that Tim Boyle gets some action in mop-up duty at quarterback for the Bears. So that tells you where they are going into Week 18. We can get into a little bit of that and not much more of it when we do our game preview later here. But, David, this is a fast-focused Friday, as Matt Eberflus likes to call it. It's the final Friday. It's the last practice of the season, and you know that vibe inside an NFL building, even for last-place teams. It's kind of that last day of school excitement. There's a little bit of energy to it just because you can see the tape at the finish line, and now it's your job to sprint through it. I'm certainly feeling that. I put it out on Twitter on Friday morning that I had some extra caffeine Friday morning. It's been an eventful week, so I'll apologize in advance at the start of this episode for the hyperness I have because I feel like there's a lot to get to and a lot of compelling topics, obviously, that we're going to talk about.
I can hear it in your voice. Let's get started. So opening drive.
It's time for the opening drive.
All right, Dan, I think that you have to acknowledge the fact that there's football to talk about. We'll get to that. There's the offseason to get to as well. But this week, whether you're an NFL fan or just a casual non-sports fan, Damar Hamlin and the incident Monday Night Football having to be resuscitated and now his recovery has captivated a country. And it has brought out in many ways the best in people. And I think that's worth mentioning as we sit here this morning on Friday morning. The news is very encouraging and the most positive it has been all week. He is in a hospital room in Cincinnati at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, but the Bills tweeted out that he has been communicating with teammates via FaceTime. He talked to the team through that device, and I think that when he told them that I love you boys, it's a great development in a story that has at different times this week struck us in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, David, the Bills put out the tweet that said that Damar Hamlin had the tubes removed that were aiding his breathing, and then you get word that he spoke not only to his family but the team, and I told you like. The emotions that produced, the head-to-toe goosebumps you got just reading the tweet were powerful. I can't imagine what Buffalo Bills players were feeling on the other end of that FaceTime call 4 days after, right? 3 full days after they watched Damar Hamlin basically die in front of them on a football field in Cincinnati, be revived twice, taken to a hospital, be in critical condition, and now reach the end of the week with the ability to speak to them. Right. I mean, what a week, on so many levels, not only for that young man and his family and his team, but for the country to kind of experience that along with everyone, and then for us, obviously, in our role here in Chicago of covering the Bears, to have the opportunity to talk to Bears players about the impact of seeing something like that, of experiencing something like that, of the deeper reflection that prompts. It's been a powerful week. There's no question about it. And I know you've spent all week talking about it on 670 The Score, and this is our first chance to kind of to hash it out here.
Well, I think it's been something that among the more interesting things to see how players have responded, because we see these guys as gladiators and it is such a violent sport. And there's, it's not a contact sport, it's a collision sport is always the cliche. And yet what this has done in many ways to many people is it's humanized them. And so you hear Josh Allen speak at the press conference on Thursday, and you see him react in real time with tears in his eyes, and Stephon Diggs and the Bills players. But Dan, I did find it, and I'll let you take it from here before we get to the audio. Listening to Sam Mustipher and David Montgomery locally at Halas Hall address their football mortality, the vulnerability that each player feels this week more than ever, I thought that was very powerful and gripping.
Yeah. we got some really good sound here, and the Bears have some really good guys in that locker room who are able to articulate and describe the emotion that goes along with that. I'll tell you a little, just a personal aside here, watching that game on Monday night with my 9-year-old son and experiencing that moment with him. This is the year where football became more than just an interest for him. It became a every minute passion, and to see a 9-year-old trying to process what he's watching on a routine tackle, and then see an ambulance, and then see his favorite players crying on the football field. You're trying to work through it. And at one point, my son was on his iPad. He was in the fantasy chat room because he had Jamar Chase and Tyler Bass playing in his final fantasy game of the season. And so then I said, "What are you doing over there?" He said, "I'm just talking to 2 of my friends in the chat room there." And so after he went to bed, I I'm going to pull up and see what they were talking about in the chat. Really some heartening stuff from young kids understanding the magnitude and perspective of, boy, we really hope Damar's okay. This is scary. I can't believe they're doing CPR. Things like that. And as a dad, you're kind of choked up because you know how big this is, and then you have to explain this to a kid who is a diehard fan of the league and a future obviously audience member. That's in our house. I can't imagine being in the households of people that have NFL players in there. And Sam Mustipher, I think, was terrific in cutting open a vein and describing some of that this week on Wednesday when we had a chance to talk with both him and David Montgomery about this. And one of the first things that we talked to Sam about was just as a player, kind of seeing that unfold on national television, and how. And here's what Sam had to say in that regard.
It's tough. There's a young man who's 24 years old, 2 years younger than me, in the hospital fighting for his life. Like, that's different. We go out there with this idea that, we play a violent game. We play a violent sport. Excuse me. I've played through multiple injuries, seen guys. I've been one of the people who had the face mask ripped off the helmet and strapped to a board. But, I think Ryan Clark said it, you're just looking for that thumbs up, and there was no thumbs up. And that's scary. Like, to be reminded of, the game that we play, the finality of life. Like, that's when I strap up, I'm not thinking about that. You know what I mean? And it's tough. It's tough to see. My prayers go out, my thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. All the people surrounding that community that is affected. I have teammates who I play with, who play with the Bills. I mean, we just shared a field with them the week before, So, yeah, it's different for sure.
How do you put that out of your mind and kind of go back to your job and focusing on what you have?
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, as tough as you want to be, as macho as you want to be, like I said, it's a violent game we play. I understand every time I go between the white lines, I might not come out the same guy I was when I walked on. But that's different. You just try your best to compartmentalize everything, compartmentalize those feelings, and then go out there and play the game you love. Like, I love this game. It's given me so much. It's afforded me so many opportunities throughout my life, and you got to put things in perspective that way. And there's really not many words to describe that type of feeling, the emotions, the mixed feelings that I have, because I do truly love this game. But when you see things like that, you hate to see those happen.
Yeah, I mean, David, I don't know about you, but I think obviously we've covered the league long enough to know that we've seen countless guys leave the field on a cart. And you see the emotion sometimes when it's clear that a guy has immediately suffered a season-ending injury, or, in the worst cases, suffers a neck injury where they have to be put on that board, like Sam Mustipher referenced. And you see the way guys rally around that on the field. This was different. And the terror and the fear in the moment of that was so sharp and so pronounced that I spent the entirety of Monday night with a pit in my stomach from what I had witnessed. To be there on the scene as Bills, Bengals players or coaches, to be in the fraternity of NFL players, I can't imagine how much sharper that pit in their stomach was that night, has been this week, and may continue to be as they continue to sort through this.
Yeah, I think you're right. When you play that sport, and it's a choice, obviously, and they're rewarded well. But I do think that the examples you reference when there's a neck injury or a concussion, or when you're dealing with somebody blows out a knee and there's the thumbs up and there's all of that. Football players understand the implied risk of the sport. And so you make that conscious decision to accept that risk when you play at a professional level, a college level, whatever the case may be. But I don't think you ever think in terms of a life or death situation, because it's just not something you ever ponder your mortality when you're putting on a football helmet. You don't expect to see a teammate or an opponent or somebody playing the same sport you're playing having to be resuscitated because his heart stopped. So you don't anticipate having a hit like that, which to me, I think makes a distinction between, not that it's important, but I do think this week it has been instructional. There's a distinction to me between what happened to Damar Hamlin and the explanation medically, and what we talk about on a regular basis about concussion awareness and player safety. Because what happened to Damar Hamlin was the equivalent of a lightning strike on a football field, whereas I think concussions are more common in the game today, and I think that's why there has to be a preventative action and an awareness that is constant. But I don't look at, you want to have a referendum on football when we talk about concussions and that kind of conversation, fine. But I don't think this is that. I think this is something much different and more traumatic because of how rare and freakish it was.
Well, you equated it to a lightning strike earlier in the week. I equated it to when I get on an airplane and I sign up for an exit row seat, and the stewardess comes around, the flight attendant comes around and says, "Hey, can you please get yourself up to speed with our procedures in case we need to evacuate this plane?" And you go, yeah. Oh, no problem. I'm happy for the leg room. You're not thinking, I can't imagine if you then had to use the details that are in that card in the back of your seat back pocket, how it'd be a holy shit moment, right? Like, oh my God, now how am I ever gonna do this again? And that's some of the things emotionally in the bridge that these players will have to cross here. I have no doubt that most of them will successfully cross this bridge here in the coming weeks, months, and years. But for some, it's going to be traumatic, and it's going to sit in the back of their heads, and it may cause them to shorten their career voluntarily. I don't know that I want to take these risks to this level. It is a rare occurrence. Again, like, so we'll go into the second piece of sound we have from Sam Mustipher, because I think it's for a lot of these guys, it's when they speak with their family, when they speak with their close friends who aren't in it, that it hits them in a different way. Here's some of what Sam Mustipher had to say about that.
I've had friends text me like, how you doing? Like, is it different? And I'm one of those guys, I don't like to talk about a lot of things with a lot of people. I really keep it internally, but my family understands that. Like, at the end of the day, this is my job. This is what I have to do. But yeah, they don't sign up for that. His mother didn't sign up for that. She thought, she was going to watch her baby on Monday Night Football. Like, that's what we dream about, like Monday Night Football, primetime game. And they don't sign up for that, but it's unfortunate. My best wishes go to them, to her. Being a parent, that's tough, man. I can't imagine. Like, I want my son to play football. I do. I love this game. I love what it's taught me, the life lessons, the responsibility, the accountability, the teamwork. And, I can't imagine, seeing my son out there like that. I know how my mom would feel. I know how my dad would feel. So it's unfortunate, man.
David, to sit in that room Wednesday and to see that single tear come out of Sam Mustipher's eye and kind of roll down his cheek, it's a humanizing moment, right, for the entire league, where when you're on a beat, you get to know these guys well. You get to develop an appreciation for who they are. And then in moments like this, you develop an appreciation for what they sacrifice and for what they invest and for what they are dealing with. Let's go right next into David Montgomery, who talked about kind of his emotions. This is Wednesday again, before we knew some of the promising progress that Damar Hamlin had made, about his kind of experience of processing this since Monday night.
Yeah. Well, for my family first, after I watched it and I kind of felt my emotions, it gave me it made me go hug my family more. Like, I hugged my girl. I told her thank you. I called my mom. I called my siblings to let them know that I love them. Because when stuff like that happens, like, sometimes you take for granted the play that you get. And it's always an opportunity and a chance that you don't get to play the next play. So it made me look at it a completely different, understand that it's important to tell your family members and everybody that you love them. And, the guys here, going back to the emotional piece, being able to tell the guys here, that I love them and I do appreciate them and who they are, how they come to work. But outside of being football players, just who they are as humans, understanding that I show my love and my gratitude to those guys.
Did you feel different coming into work today or going out to the field to walk through?
Yeah, I was kind of uneasy. It was just one of those things, you put yourself in a situation and understand that it could be you. So, like, it was definitely been on the forefront of my mind because, it hasn't even been, 3 full days yet. And, he's in there fighting for his life. So, it's been on my mind since it happened. It's going to be on my mind. And,
David Montgomery's a pretty powerful speaker, too. They picked two guys who definitely are leaders in that locker room, whose voice carries a long way, and also has a kind of perspective that you saw across the league, frankly, in every NFL city. I think that what we were reminded of this week is just how fragile, each career is. And so that the recognition of that and amplifying it from these guys was pretty refreshing.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And that's a very good word, is fragile, and I think we take it for granted a lot when we go to games, when we watch these players play games. You just don't know when it could be your last play, as David Montgomery said. A lot of those times it's because of an injury. In this case, it was because of a life-threatening emergency, which obviously brought the impact of it down further. We'll have plenty of time in the months ahead to kind of talk about what this means for the future of football. To your point, participation rates already dropping in the lower ranks because of the head injury part of things, which is, right. I agree with you. It's a totally different lane on this discussion, but this is, I guarantee you there are parents across the country that experienced that on Monday night and said, oh God, I got to give some second thoughts to what we're doing with this. Got one more piece of sound from David Montgomery, because I want to follow up after we hear from him just about kind of the resources available to players now in today's NFL, and that component of players understanding that their mental health and their emotional well-being is a huge part of what they do. Here's what David Montgomery had to say on that front.
Being sure that we be translucent, that we are translucent, and allowing everyone to feel whatever emotion that they feel and not judging them upon the emotion that they feel. Allowing everyone to go through what they got to go through mentally, whether it's taking, some time or, taking a couple plays to breathe a little bit, or, coming together as a full team and talking. Like, we had a great conversation this morning with the leadership council and the rest of the team. And, Mr. McCaskey came down and, he talked to us all. He let us all know that he's here with us and he's here for us. We got our leaders stepping up and allowing everybody to know that this is a safe space, it's a safe haven for everyone to talk and be completely vulnerable, so that that you can express what you need to express. Because, like I always say, mental health is a real thing, and this situation can be triggering for a lot of people's mental health. But we handling it accordingly, and we in constant prayer for him and his family.
That's really also powerful, because it's one thing to be a league that wants to embrace mental health initiatives, and everybody can have the social media team that promotes mental health awareness. But when you hear the emotion in his voice and using the kind of language, frankly, that he used in describing everything, that number one, he is somebody who has bought into this and is using his resources to his advantage. And also just when it's so prevalent. It's more than just a commercial. These are real. This is real progress being made in a week where it's never been more necessary.
Well, what I wanted to ask you, because you obviously played college football on a high level, and in my time covering the league, I've seen an evolution and a door opening up. Montgomery used the word vulnerable. Just to see the acceptance of players being able to express their emotions, to come to grips with their emotions, to do those things. That didn't exist when you and I were growing up. It probably didn't exist 15, 20 years ago in terms of how far open that door is. I'm curious your perspective, having lived this in a different way than I ever did.
Yeah, I think too, going even back to, this is the 20th year covering the Bears, at the beginning of that tenure, guys were probably not encouraged to the point of expressing themselves, of being open, or even talking about it. There would be
probably discouraged, right? I mean,
or discouraged or mocked.
Yeah.
If people were this open about their feelings in the Bears locker room 20 years ago, my sense is that they would be reluctant to do that because of the repercussions from a peer pressure type of way. And there's not any one or two examples or one or two players I'm thinking of specifically, but I do think just overall the culture in the NFL at that point in time, it was less accepting of things like talking about translucence and mental health awareness and vulnerability. They would be viewed as soft. So that's my career, in my experiences as a reporter. Going back to when I played, a generation ago, it was totally different because you didn't really even understand what that represented. So you didn't think about fragility, and all you worried about, I played college football, so all you worried about was getting beaten out and being the toughest guy in the room if you could. So, going from, I had an experience, again, this is not related to what Damar Hamlin went through, but a concussion. You're on the stretcher. I'm in an ambulance. You're in an emergency room, and all I could think about was, it was in the spring. Am I going to miss a practice?
Yeah.
And it wasn't about, boy, I want to get in touch with my feelings and I want to understand the risk reward calculus. There was none of that conversation, and frankly, there were no resources available. It was just, am I going to miss a practice because I can't lose my job? And so we've come a long way since then, and I think it all represents progress, because you could hear from Sam Mustipher, from David Montgomery, from Josh Allen, throughout the league. There are all kinds of examples this week of just how far the league has come.
Last thoughts on this. I give the Bears a lot of credit. They have their leadership council, as most teams do, to be able to sound these things out in a very productive manner. And those leadership council meetings are much more productive when you have a group of good leaders. I think this team, for as much as we kill them for losing 14 games and not having won in 2 months and everything else, has a locker room full of human beings that you want to build successful things with. Like, I've experienced that all year with guys who are mature and grounded and capable of perspective and all of those things. And when you have that kind of leadership, it helps you. It helps you through difficult times, which, there are different brands of difficult times, as the Bears can surely attest. But a credit to those guys, because you said, look, like David Montgomery and Sam Mustipher are great leaders and great speakers in that locker room. We were giving the Bears PR team a list of 15 guys that we thought would be good in this environment, and said, like, look, we get some guys aren't going to want to talk. They don't want to get on that stage and be this vulnerable. But the fact that there were that many guys that we felt that were capable of doing it is a testament to some of the stuff that they're building there.
You know how rare that is. There's some years where you can't get to 5. You can, it's a short list, and this is not one of those years. Yeah, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. I think the awareness has been heightened, and the conversations are valuable. We'll continue to have them here on the Take the North podcast as this evolves, and hopefully as Damar Hamlin continues to recover. But let's get back to football. Let's get back to the field. Let's get back to Sunday's Bears-Viking game with our game preview. All right, Dan. So we found out early this week, well, I guess midweek, Justin Fields not going to play. He's got a hip sprain.
Strain.
Strain. However, they're spelling the made-up injury. No, it's not. I know.
He's got a hip. And it's the hips principle, not the hits principle. I called it the quits principle because I think they've conceded here. I think they want to lose this game, and they're doing everything in their power to make sure that happens. And certainly Justin Fields not being on the field
is a good way to make sure that happens.
So just a light moment, because that was pretty heavy in that first segment. We get out to practice on Thursday afternoon. Wednesday's walkthrough was closed, and we walk out there for the 8 to 10 minute period that's open. And good friend Mark Potash, friend of the podcast, who always has that perfectly dry wit, gets out there. He's got his roster with him, and he gives me a little elbow and goes, "Which one's Peterman?" And so it was, for me, it was just that moment of, yeah, this is week 18 here at Ellis Hall. He was kidding, obviously, but when Nathan Peterman and Tim Boyle are taking your quarterback reps, and it's pretty clear that there is zero intent of trying to win this football game on Sunday, it just tells you where you're at. Listen, I understand it. We've gotten to this point in the season. I think that there is a practical decision here to be made with Justin Fields. There's a practical decision to be made to protect his health. There's a practical decision to be made based on what we saw in the second half in Detroit, where the offensive line couldn't protect at all. And you say, why are we going to take our chances for this? The experience is valuable. We feel like he's gained a lot of experience through what he's done since August until now. Let's not tempt fate here. Let's go ahead and finish off where we are in terms of draft status, figure out whether we finish 1, 2, and let's just move on with this. And I have no qualms with it. We've pushed back for a long time this week. Whatever. Make whatever decision feels most comfortable for you, and we'll turn the page and move on.
Yeah, people going out to Soldier Field that thought they were going to see a quarterback make history, or one who has made NFL history, can still say they did that, because Nathan Peterman still holds this record for throwing the most interceptions in his first NFL start. So you're still going to see a historic NFL quarterback for the Bears.
Nathan Peterman's last start also, as you know, came in it was in November of 2018 against these very Bears, when he was with the Bills, and they got beat 41-9. He threw 3 interceptions. Leonard Floyd returned 1 for a touchdown. The play that signified that day to me more than any was at the end of the half, with the Bills getting blown out. Peterman had a chance from the Bears side of midfield to throw a Hail Mary into the end zone, but was so scarred at that point of that game that he just took off and ran for like 20 yards and ran out of bounds to end the half, rather than take the risk of throwing another interception. You're already getting blown out, and I was just like, wow, this kid is broken within this game, and I don't know if anyone can ever fix him. Obviously, he's lasted here another 4+ years, and we'll see what he's able to do Sunday. But people don't come to the podcast to hear our breakdown of Nathan Peterman. They come to us to hear what we think about Justin Fields. And this gives us an opening now, before the season ends, to kind of do our season-ending initial wrap-up on what we saw from Justin. And so I'd be curious just to kind of get your thumbnail of how you feel now that we know for sure that his 2022 season is over.
I think he has established himself as a dynamic playmaker, somebody who has the ability to change the course of a game on any given play. And those players are very difficult to find. This is what special looks like. I've said that on occasion. I will repeat that, because you cannot coach that, and you certainly can't defense that. So in this season's emergence, Justin Fields, to me, while not fully feeling satisfied with what you have, he has answered the question of who the Bears' future quarterback is. Who is your franchise quarterback? I think the Bears have to answer that question by saying it is Justin Fields, because they have too many other questions to address. That's not winning by default necessarily. It kind of is, but I think that you can do 2 things. You can acknowledge the fact that he has a room to grow as a passer. You can acknowledge the fact that he has, it's incomplete in his progress in terms of a passer. And you can identify some of those reasons why are related to the lack of an offensive line and wide receiver talent. He has to improve himself personally. He will get better as the supporting cast does too, but he's your guy. And I think the Bears have to learn to love him, even though we don't know for sure if Ryan Poles does. I think eventually he will come to that conclusion.
So my 3-word preview for the 2023 offseason is see it through. And it's, you have to see through the swing that the previous regime took on Justin Fields, because he has shown you so much as a playmaker, so much as a leader, so much as a steady hub of energy within that building, that you have no choice but to take this as far as it will go. Collectively, with Justin, with his coaching staff, with everything else, it's a good choice. I say you have no choice, as if that would be like there'd be some resistance to that. No one's going to fight that. I bring that up only because there's already been this chatter on, okay, you're not going to get a chance to pick this high ever again. Would this be your time to roll the dice and take another quarterback and trade Justin Fields? That would be the boldest move in the history of Chicago sports decision making if Ryan Poles decided that he was going to flip the page on Justin Fields after 1 year together and take a bigger swing on someone else, given the belief and the hope and the energy that Justin Fields has created in an entire city. That's just one small piece of this conversation.
I don't know how you do that as a first-year general manager who has not built up the credibility or the track record to be that bold, Dan. Maybe he would, maybe he will. But to me, if I'm sitting here on January 6th, I'm saying that I believe Justin Fields has a greater chance, or I have more confidence in Justin Fields becoming an elite quarterback than I do in Ryan Poles' becoming an elite talent evaluator. That's not a knock on Poles, but I think if you're looking at this and you're suggesting drafting a quarterback with the first or second overall pick, I don't want to hit reset again at Haugh. I don't think they need to. Find a practical way to make this work. And I love your 3 words. Find a practical way to see this through.
Yeah. And so, like, there's a lot to this conversation, and it will only get more involved, but Ryan Poles' voice is more important than anyone's in it. And at some point next week, he will sit up at a dais at Haugh Hall and he will give us his thoughts. He may not be able to give us his 100% unfiltered thoughts on everything for a number of reasons. Doesn't want to say things out loud in a public forum, doesn't want to tip his hand to people who might be interested in coming to trade for their draft pick, whatever it may be. But he better make it clear to people that matter what his stance is on the quarterback that he has in his building right now, because you cannot create uncertainty in that regard. I'll turn that over to you, and then I've got a handful of things to share because I had a fun Thursday at Haugh Hall.
Well, I do think that he's walking a very fine line, and it's a very delicate balance in projecting any kind of public doubt in your quarterback if you haven't privately assured him that he's the guy, because you might want to project public doubt to increase the value of whatever pick you have in the first round. But in doing so, if you cut into or erode any kind of confidence or any kind of inner chemistry, rapport, let's talk. It's Justin Fields. If you create doubt internally in Justin Fields, that's a mistake. So it's going to be a delicate balance that Ryan Poles tries to strike.
Yeah, you got to do it. So on Thursday, I had an opportunity first to have a one-on-one with Luke Getsy, and then later in the afternoon, we had a chance as a group to talk with Andrew Janocko. And these two guys' input, perspective, insight will be valuable in what the Bears are doing going forward. You said something a couple minutes ago about determining why the passing game was as broken as it was. This is a collective effort at Haugh Hall to put together that pie chart, right? You have to say, okay, offensive line, receiving core, play calling, quarterback, other. You're going to break this pie up. And for those who believe that Justin Fields doesn't have a piece of that pie, you're just living in la-la land and fantasy land, and that's fine. But it was really cool to listen to the guys that have coached him most closely, for 8 months now, to get a feel for kind of how they feel about things. I'm going to share some things. I know you've played this on 670 The Score, some of the thoughts from Andrew Janocko. I put out a tweet thread on Thursday night that if you are a person that is interested in this quarterback, there's probably some stuff that you're going to enjoy and like hearing. So here's some of the stuff from Andrew Janocko. First of all, he said that Justin was peeved, was the word, that he wasn't able to play on Sunday. You love that, right? Andrew Janocko said, dude wants to play, which is a great sign when you have a quarterback who wasn't necessarily down with the big picture organizational decision that was made about his health for this week. That's a big deal. Now, Janocko also talked about what we just said, that there's going to be a plan put in place as an organization to figure out what they can do to put their best foot forward and making sure they get Justin where he needs to go as a quarterback. They have to give this their best effort across many different channels to try to again, see it through and see where they can take Justin as a quarterback. There's been a firm appreciation inside that building, David, all year about the way Fields has picked up the offense and understood it, the way he has taken control of everything on game day. That's pregame, postgame, huddle, sidelines, all those things. They've seen undeniable growth in the pocket awareness he's had. They've seen him improve his understanding of reads and progressions. And then the quote that I think resonated with a lot of people in the moment, and then obviously on social media and when they hear it on the air, is when I asked Andrew Janocko about what Fields' ownership does for the group. right? And how that is a valuable asset that he has. And he says he wants this to be his franchise. He wants this to be his city. Just the way he works, spend 5 minutes with the kid and he's a dude. He's a dog. He's an alpha. He wants to be it. And I'm sure you would agree that's one of those made for social media quotes that will excite a lot of people in regards to who Justin Fields is as a football player, a leader, and the guy who wants to be QB1 for a long time.
Oh, yeah. People will eat that up. I mean, you want that kind of mentality, somebody who embraces the responsibility and all that comes with it and wants to own the city. We have said for years and years and years, if you're the quarterback of the Chicago Bears and you have some success, you can own the town. It was the thing that Jay Cutler really never fully embraced. That was part of the reason why I think that there was this reticence and this distance always between Jay and maybe Bears fans. He didn't have the success either, but that willingness to want to be the guy, the alpha mentality, that's what Justin Fields exudes. It's obvious to anyone that watches him that he possesses that inner confidence that I think Andrew Janelko was trying to describe.
So I'll be working on a deeper piece for later in the month, kind of the report card on Justin Fields' second season. And one of the best voices for that is Luke Getsy, because as you know, one of the reasons that I've really come to appreciate who Luke is, not only as a coach, but as a communicator, is he keeps it real, right? Like everything that comes out of his mouth is sincere, it's genuine, it's grounded. He doesn't feel like he has to play games with the way he speaks to people. He's direct, he's honest, he understands that resonates. And he's direct and honest, and he resonates with Justin Fields because Justin wants that in his world. And so the union between these two guys at Halas Hall has been a match made in heaven, in my opinion. And it's going to be able to take them both where they both want to go if they can see it through in the proper ways. The chance to ask Luke Getsy some positive questions, some critical questions, get him to provide an overview of the season was fascinating for me. And one of the things that you said or asked me to ask him going into the interview was just, that midseason, that October tweak, when we made some twists to the offensive plan and changed things around on how they were going to operate. How much was there to be made of that? What was that? What did that unlock? And really what he said is, look, it gave Justin the chance to shine what he has that no one else has. And so they made these schematic tweaks, and he said it just created more freedom for Justin. It created more confidence for Justin. And all of a sudden it got the airplane that the Bears were boarded on away from the gate, right? And onto a runway when we were stuck in a delay for the first 6 weeks of the season. And then all of a sudden you saw them take off. Now, to go along with that, Luke is very aware that the Bears finished this season most likely as the number 1 rushing team in the NFL and the number 32 passing team in the NFL. And he's bothered by that. And he said, that's real. He used the word sustainability. It came out of his mouth without it being said by me. And he said, teams that are really successful in the league need a balance that helps their offensive success be sustainable. They understand that they found pockets of success throughout the year, that they found wrinkles that could get them in the end zone here and there, that they could have a 4-week surge where they averaged a lot. This offseason is going to be about creating that balance. And how do you create balance for a team that's first in one category and 32nd in another? You focus on the thing that made you 32nd, right? And you figure out what that is. And Justin has ownership in that. I've got a few more things to share, but I'm curious how you feel about just the open and honest admission from inside the building that what they did this year will not produce sustainable success.
Well, I think that when you say that and you're employed by the Bears and whether you're Luke Getsy or Ryan Poles, as he said last week on the pregame show to Jeff Joniak, and you're objectively critical of what you need to do to take that next step, that sounds like football talk. That's really valuable, and it's relevant because these are the people that are around there every day. What gets confusing, and we don't need to revisit this, but when you say the same thing that is similar thing to what Luke Getsy is saying about the offense and the passing game, or about Justin Fields that Ryan Poles described, then all of a sudden you're a hater, or that's all of a sudden you're going the other way too far and you're being too critical of a quarterback you don't dare criticize. What Luke Getsy said to you one-on-one, and what he has said every Thursday throughout the season has been refreshing because of its candor, because he's not afraid to coach Justin Fields as hard as he needs to coach him, and he holds him accountable, and also because he's practical. He realizes that the number one priority in this offseason, if you have his job, is to improve the passing game, and it starts with the quarterback, and then it goes to personnel and getting the right people in place.
So a couple more things that I wanted to share, and first and foremost, you've got a quarterback that is impressive with his steadiness and maturity. And I said this to Dan Bernstein and Lawrence Holmes earlier in the week on 670 The Score. I said, I've been impressed that Justin Fields is able to handle criticism of Justin Fields so much better than a lot of Bears fans are able to handle criticism of Justin Fields. And that's a credit to him. And the coaches in that building talk about how that emotional steadiness that is one of Justin's greatest strengths allows them to get places that they're not always able to get to with every player, because you're not worried about bruising an ego. You're not worried about a fragile psyche. You can just coach. You can just coach hard. You can understand. You can know that the message will be received the way it's intended to be received. That is a huge gift for a quarterback at this stage of development. So let's not underrate that. I asked Luke what excites him most going forward, and he said, look, Justin is still so young and raw in this. And that's the coolest part, because these other gifts that he has gives him the opportunity to pursue success in a way that he can take it as far as he wants to go. The work ethic and the mindset are there, he said, to chase it like nobody else. And then we got into a concept that related to a play that related to a season-long flaw of Justin Fields that I think is worth bringing to the attention of our audience. First of all, I put out a tweet earlier in the week of a screen grab, and I apologize in advance because I'm still technologically deficient. And I didn't realize that screen grabs off the All-22 that's so 2016, And I got killed by people like, why don't you post a video? I don't know how to post a video. New Year's resolution, off-season goal, learn how to post video on Twitter. Okay. That's just a full-on honest admission that I'm technologically flawed in that regard. But you know the play I'm talking about. It's the play where Justin Fields lost a fumble against the Detroit Lions, and it's a microcosm of all the things they want him to work on this offseason. That's why it's such a telling play to me, because it's everything they want him to work on. The play, as you know, starts with a max protect look. You've got 8 guys in protection, only 2 in pattern, and only 1 primary read on this play. It's a shot play to Dante Pettis on a post corner route. Justin sees a single high look before the snap, and as soon as he takes the snap, the Lions kind of roll that corner to his left back into a bit of a cover 2 look. The Bears coaches wanted Justin Fields to recognize that quickly, hit the throw. We've talked all year about anticipation throws. Get it out of your hands, fire it, trust your receiver, make the play. You can make all these other arguments. Justin doesn't trust Dante Pettis because he's dropped balls and he's not a top-tier receiver. The offensive line wasn't going to give him help. Don't make these excuses. Justin's not making them. The Bears coaches aren't making them. So he misses that read, right? And you saw him pump on it. All right. So Getsy says the next thing that Justin's supposed to do on that play is get his eyes quickly over to the running back. In this case, it's Khalil Herbert. And Khalil Herbert actually got hung up in a little bit of trash. They had 4 players blocking 1, David, and Herbert went over to chip there and kind of got hung up there. But Justin's still got to know that that's his next read and get the ball over there for a check down. What he does instead is decide, I've got to become a runner here. Gets out of the pocket, takes off, and carries the ball carelessly. Something he hasn't done all year. It's just out to his right, gets strip sacked from behind. The Bears lose the football. Getsy's point on this play is that even if Justin holds on to the ball, it's a 1st and 10 play. Even if he protects the ball well and he gets taken down from behind for a 1 or 2 yard gain, that is too much mental and physical fuel to spend on a play that's first down in the second quarter of a game. What he has said, this is Luke Getsy's words, is that Justin has a habit of holding on to plays too long. And I asked him to clarify that because Mitch Trubisky had a habit of holding on to plays too long in a different way. He would make a mistake and then he would be stuck in his head for 3 or 4 plays thinking about the mistake he made. That's not what Luke is talking about. Justin has the ability to etch-a-sketch mistakes out of his way. His hold on to plays too long definition is that if the play is designed to get you 18 to 20 yards and it's not there, you have to be comfortable letting that go and getting to that check down. And understanding that 2nd and 5 is a big play for this offense, an important play for this offense. Justin spent his entire college career with the luxury of having great protection and terrific weapons and being like, I can just wait. I can just wait for this home run to be here for me and hit that play. You're not going to be able to do that at this level. So that was one play I think that talks about timing, anticipation, getting your check down, understanding how to do the simple simply, and all the things that come into the next step of him being a qualified passer.
It's hard to deprogram at that point because things did come more easily at Ohio State, and he's not there any longer, and he's still a young quarterback developing. I also think that his ability to improvise sometimes could be, in that case, in those examples, a curse more than a blessing.
Yes.
Because you always think that you're capable of escaping this impossible situation. So I'm going to hold on to the ball as long as possible. And you don't ever kind of process quickly enough to think, well, I need to just concede here, because you don't have to concede. You're Justin Fields. You could turn nothing into something very quickly because you've done it before. So those are all really good examples.
We heard Matt Eberflus tell us a month ago that the running that Justin is doing needs to be reduced, and it needs to be reduced situationally. You have to understand that on first down, you don't need to try to hit the home run. And one of their lessons for him is just trying to take the fuel usage away from him, physically, mentally, emotionally, of those types of plays. You know how much easier it is to just, boom, hit the running back for a check down, get 5 yards, and not have to run around, use a bunch of physical, mental, emotional energy, and then take a big hit at the end of a play like that. That's what they're trying to get off his plate. That's what they're trying to do to get this passing game to the next level. There's so much more we can get into as we go. But like really fascinating stuff from inside the building that tells you kind of that they're breaking up that pie chart, and they see deficiencies and flaws that need to be worked on. It doesn't mean Justin Fields isn't going to become the quarterback that Chicago believes he can become, and in some pockets believe he already has become. But there is definite acknowledgement that, look, like this is a climb, and it's a steep climb, and let's see where we can go with it.
The only way he will become that quarterback is if they coach him that hard and they see the things that they need to see as coaches, and they aren't deluded into this idea that he has already arrived. The way they're not fans. They need to look at this critically like coaches do. And that's the good news. And I think Luke Getsy has proven that he is not going to be dazzled by anything. This is a grounded young coach, and the Bears are lucky to have him. All right, Dan, the perfunctory part of the podcast, we need to get to our predictions just to get them on the record. I'm saying 31-13 Vikings over Bears, and I'm afraid that Nathan Peterman might have 3 interceptions and Justin Jefferson might have 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm actually having to pull this up because it's so perfunctory that I forgot what my score prediction was. I heard it as it's 24-13 Vikings. It's so meaningless that I don't even really know or care what the final score is. I have taken the liberty already of writing about 60% of my game column for Sunday because the proceedings that are on the field are relevant to the big picture view of this team. So maybe we can get to our post game pod Sunday evening a little bit quicker than usual because I'm already ahead of the game.
What do you think, Studs?
Yeah, we could probably just do the post game pod now if you guys really want to. Honestly, we should wait for the final of the Texans and the Colts game because that has a bigger impact on. That's the game. I'm going to be watching the Bears game, but really going to have a hard eye on that Texans Colts game. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, doesn't matter what the score is going to be. Minnesota 30, Bears 10, I guess, is what I put on 670thescore.com. Honestly, if the Bears score a point, it's going to be a win. I don't know if they're going to – Minnesota's defense is bad, so they'll probably find a way to score. But, yeah, it doesn't matter. They're going to lose, and I think we're all – if they win, then I don't – it might be the most disappointing win that I've ever sat through.
I don't know. There's been a few of those. Every win this season has been disappointing in Chicago, though. So maybe not.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
No Texans. All right, let's move on to our Inside Halas Hall segment. Dan, this week was momentous. Thursday, January 5th. Virginia McCaskey, team matriarch, beloved figure in Chicago sports, and somebody who has been around for, I think, 1,415 Bears games, turned 100 years old. Remarkable achievement. The only person in Chicago who might not be impressed is Sister Jean, the Loyola chaplain, and I think that Virginia McCaskey is one of those, just an icon in the NFL just because of her stature and how long she has she's been omnipresent with everything involving the Bears and the McCaskey family.
So one of the things that I'm truly grateful for during my time on the beat is 2019, because that 100th year celebration was so well timed. The Bears, it's the 1 year where the Bears had a good season beforehand, right? 2018, they win a division, they win 12 games, they're in the playoffs, and there was a vibe and an energy in Chicago that made that celebration in the spring and summer and into the fall of 2019 so enjoyable and energizing And as part of that, in the spring, in March of 2019, Rich Campbell and I got a chance to sit down with Virginia McCaskey at the Arizona Biltmore at the owners' meetings for a 25-minute podcast. Like, Virginia McCaskey came on our podcast to talk about kind of her 100-year history. Obviously at that point, I think she's 96, but the things that struck you, David, were the enthusiasm and the spirit and the competitive spirit she has for what this team means and what it is, but then also the sharpness of her memory to be in her 90s and remember in vivid detail things such as the 1932 de facto NFL championship game that was played indoors at Chicago Stadium because they wanted to get a better gate, right? They wanted to sell more tickets and they didn't want to be outdoors for this game. And remembering the odor of that game because the circus had just been through town, it's fascinating. And she just had so many anecdotes and so many stories from 1932 to 2006 and 2018 and beyond, and everything in between. And you're just like, wow, this is a woman who is an encyclopedia, whose father founded this league, whose father poured his passion into everything he did with the Chicago Bears. And it was just such a, for 25 minutes on a spring day in March 2019, just an invigorating experience to be in her presence.
It's a great privilege that you guys had. I mean, that not everyone has that kind of access, and the fact that she was as willing of a participant says a lot about the type of woman that she is. And, what's always impressed me about Virginia McCaskey, Dan, is that this isn't somebody who, obviously she grew up in a football family, but I don't think that she ever envisioned being in the position that she has been in for so many years. Her younger brother, Muggs, as everybody knows, it died unexpectedly, tragically in 1979, the last game in December of that year, the last game of the season. He has a heart attack, and all of a sudden things in terms of the succession plan change. And when George Halas passed, then all of a sudden there's Virginia. And she has never acted in a way that felt like this was a burden. It was just more of a blessing. And so there are many things that people have criticized over the years about the McCaskey family, and they will continue to be polarizing in Chicago. It is the Bears after all, and they are a public trust. So I think a lot of people feel obligated, or they feel entitled to criticize the family like it's like their corporation, but it isn't a corporation. And Virginia McCaskey has always been somebody that has been protected by the family, I think, and in the organization. And the players, with very few exceptions over the years, have had the utmost respect for her.
Yeah, and so in 2018, Virginia McCaskey spoke to that team before the season began. And if you remember, it was Labor Day weekend, they acquire Khalil Mack, and all of a sudden Matt Nagy's bringing this new coach energy into the building. And Virginia McCaskey addresses this team in the Muggs Halas Auditorium there at Halas Hall. And her message was essentially talking about confidence, about what it takes to achieve high-level success. And I remember hearing from monsters on that defense, guys like Danny Trevathan and Akeem Hicks, how struck they were by her expression of what confidence means. And I'll never forget Danny Trevathan say that she said that the 85 defense was so confident that it scared her. Right. And it was like that level of just certitude and alpha and anything you want to attach to the greatest team in team history resonated so deeply with Virginia McCaskey that she feels a need to pay it forward to these other generations of Bears players to let them know that's what it looks like, guys. Like, that's what you have to develop. You have to develop that confidence. And I just love those types of moments of this woman in her 90s standing in front of that group of guys who ended up being the best defense in the NFL that season and expressing that in a way that got them fired up. That's cool stuff. Couple other quick stories for you. So Virginia McCaskey told us in 2019 that for the 1963 NFL championship game, I think Virginia has 11 children, if I'm not mistaken, and they had kind of run through their allotment of tickets, and they had to cut people in their family out of going to that 1963 NFL championship game against the Giants, which is obviously the last championship the Bears won before they won the Super Bowl. And her daughter, Ann, eventually decided this game is going to mean a lot more to George than it is to me. And she willingly gave up her ticket to George McCaskey. It was a nice show of sibling love and affection that always resonated with Virginia as, boy, I've raised some good kids. And I think you'd agree that the McCaskey family is a pleasant, kind, generous family that look, like, I document it all the time. In the last 30 years, the Bears have had 11 last place finishes and 4 playoff victories. That's under the microscope. But as people, as human beings, as folks you want to be around, they're pleasant. And I'll have one more anecdote, but you've had experience as well.
That's always been the conundrum, is that when you're evaluating them as a family or whoever runs a football team, running a football team, it's easy to be critical because they haven't had the success that they should in Chicago. But as a family and relatability, it's always been very warm. And whether, I've probably gotten to know George and Brian better than other people in the family. And I've had maybe, obviously when I was back on the beat, when I first came to town, everyone has that moment where, you get a golf cart picking you up at Bourbonnais or training camp. You go to meet with Virginia McCaskey and she asks you questions and you get to know her. And you remember that because those moments are pretty rare. But I would echo what you're saying about the family. There's just definitely, you see, I don't think they ever envisioned being as polarizing or as public as they have become. Yeah. But it is the family business, so that is the reality of it. But there's very little to criticize when it comes to those kind of relationships because it's just a relatable family.
One last anecdote. In March 2019, as you remember, Khalil Mack was then what Justin Fields is now, the uber star, the guy that everyone thought was going to carry them to the next level. And George McCaskey was sharing with us the story of the weekend that the Bears traded for Khalil Mack. And he said that, Ryan and Ted had come to him and said, hey, we've got a chance to get Khalil Mack here. Here's what we're talking through. And so George went to his mother, Virginia, and said, Mom, we have a chance to trade for Khalil Mack, but it's going to take us 2 first-round draft picks. And Virginia said, okay, go get him. And George, pumped a fist, walked out of the room and gave the green light. And he said, a little while later, Ted Phillips came back to him and said, this is going to cost us $90 million to sign him to a contract extension. And George said, Mom can read about that in the papers. He never took that one back to her. He said if she read it in the papers, he could say, you can't believe everything you read in the Tribune, Mom.
That's a good one. I had not heard that one before. I did know that he went to her before making that move, but I didn't know that he did not tell her exactly how expensive Khalil Mack would be. Money well spent, by the way.
Yeah.
But that's a good one. All right.
Happy birthday,
Virginia McCaskey, 100 years old, the matriarch of the Bears organization, and just somebody that is very, very easy to respect at Halas Hall. All right, let's close things up with a 2-minute drill.
The 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill.
Good news this week. Devin Hester, a Pro Football Hall of Fame finalist for the second year. Dan, I think this is the year he goes in. I don't care historically if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I do care if he doesn't get in. I think he changed the game in a way that everybody in Chicago remembers. So Devin Hester, I think, will get the call this week. I'm sorry, this year, next month.
Yeah, Super Bowl weekend is when these guys find out for sure. Devin was hurt last year when he wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is understandable. I think it's cool if he gets in this year because David did be class of 23, right? And how symbolic would that be to have number 23 go in this year? I had a chance in September to talk to Devin about this. And really, you talk to anybody that's part of the Hall of Fame selection committee and they say, look, like first ballot guys to them are guys whose case you don't need to state. You just stand up in that room and you say Peyton Manning and everyone goes, yeah, Hall of Famer. You put him in. When there's a debate about it, it takes a little longer for some people to wrap their arms around it. Devin wanted his case understood on why he wanted to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I asked him why, kind of how he processes that it's probably a when, not if proposition for him. Here's what he told me back in September.
I was frustrated. I was upset because at the end of the day, when you look at the Hall of Fame, you look at, you don't categorize a guy for what position he played. You categorize a guy on what he brought to the game of football. And that's what I want to be viewed as. I don't want to be viewed as a special team. I want to be viewed as a national football player and what value did he bring to this game of football.
When they tell you, and I've heard this from a lot of committee members that are part of the process, that it really is for you a when, not if proposition of when you will be in that Hall of Fame. How does that resonate with you, knowing that that your day is coming? It may be this year, it may be next year, but it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming, you know what I mean? But I was was more so. I really wanted to be a first ballot. I didn't want them to just classify me and say that look at me as just a special team guy and say we can't push a special team guy as a first ballot. But in reality, I wanted to be fair. Every guy has a position on the field, and whether it's a returner or a quarterback, you know what I mean? You got when the Hall of Fame name is the name of Hall of Fame is brought up, you have to put the best that ever do it in the Hall of Fame, regardless of what position. And that's what I was pretty much trying to present myself at. Listen, I know I'm a special team guy. I know I'm a kickoff return returner. But at the end of the day, do you look at me as the best to ever do it?
I do.
I do. I mean, I know I'm biased because we watched every game that he ever played in Chicago, but I think that the standard is what the standard is. And if you are the best to ever do it, even if you're in the top three, which that would be the argument, Devin Hester belongs in Canton.
Former Bear Jared Allen, also a finalist for the Hall of Fame this year.
Why? How? I mean,
not as a Bear, David, for what he did in Minnesota. The guy
is this the all-interview team or the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Come on. Jared Allen was elite as a pass rusher for a long period of time.
I'll give you that. But if you let Jared Allen in, how many other guys are opening the door to?
Boy, we'll have a later discussion about Jared Allen's credentials because I'm probably biased in that regard too. But he was fantastic.
That I will look forward to that debate during Hall of Fame week. Also, Dan, this week at Haugh Hall, with all of the attention, obviously elsewhere, Haugh Barkish returned, and it brought to mind what he went through back in July, I believe, and he was resuscitated and he was brought back, and he has had a long recovery. And this week he made his return to Haugh Hall. Haugh Barkish, of course, the publisher of Pro Football Weekly, a longtime staple on the Bears beat, and somebody who was back at work this week.
David, I think it was early August when he was leaving a training camp practice and collapsed on his way to his car, and the parking lot for training camp was not on site at Haugh Hall. It's you have to walk down to a campus down that football drive there, and he was found and he was suffering cardiac arrest and had to be revived by Bears security VP John Tarpey, and I remember that day and the feelings inside that room when Hub was taken over to Lake Forest Hospital that Hub was gone. And that fear. And then the other day I walk into Haugh Hall on, I think it was Wednesday, and the setup there, and Hub's just kind of mingling around in the press conference room, and I saw him through the glass doors, and I just kind of looked up, and then I was like going about setting my laptop up, and I'm like, wait a second, that's Hub. Seeing him there, it's just so normal because I've seen him there thousands of times over 10 years, and to have him back in there was so cool. Tarpey was able to come to him and give him his badge, his security badge back, and said, "You dropped this," and just an emotional moment to see Hub back in there, looking like $1 million. By the way, he looks fantastic. I know you've heard him on the radio. He sounds good. The progress he's made in 4 months, really, really, really cool. And then just to give you one more Mark Potash anecdote for the podcast, Potsy comes in as Hub's entertaining a group of about 6 of us over by his cubicle, and Mark walks in the door, and Hub is standing in front of Potsy's cubicle, and Potsy says, "Hey, that's my seat." And it just reminds you of kind of the bond we have as people in that room, and how much everyone just kind of enjoys that part of the experience of covering a beat and being able to kind of bust each other's balls.
I love Tarpey's handling of that situation. Hey, you dropped this. That's great. And it also says everything about Hub being back on the scene, that he has been back he was back maybe for 8 hours before he alienated the Bears fan base, going on the score and questioning Justin Fields, which was beautiful because it was just vintage Hub. He has his opinions. Those opinions remain strong. You take them, you leave them, you love him, because he is the kind of guy you want on a beat. He brings it each and every day.
Yeah, and Hub's son, Arthur, who was part of the beat for a little while, was able to be there with him on Wednesday. And obviously Arthur's been through a lot in these last 4 months. And just to hear him express kind of his gratitude and thanks to all of the people from the Bears staff that responded so quickly, to the doctors that have gotten his father back up and running to this level. Really, really cool. And look, we've talked about a lot of powerful moments on this podcast. That was one of them this week.
Last thing I have, Dan, the bookkeeping matters, but Equanimity of St. Brown signed a 1-year contract extension, $1.25 million. Don't want to be cynical here, but did he earn that?
Look, you gave the important parameters there. 1 year, $1.25 million. That doesn't guarantee him a role in week one. It doesn't guarantee that he's on the 53-man roster next Labor Day. It guarantees that he's in training camp. It guarantees that he's got a chance to try to build on whatever he laid down here in 2022. I don't think we need to over-exaggerate the significance of it. I think that people in the building see him as dependable and selfless, and that he can play a role in this offense. We all know they have to upgrade that position. We don't know whether Equanimity St. Brown will be part of it the next time Justin Fields plays a game, but he certainly has a chance to continue here. And then obviously perhaps alongside another receiver who made waves this week with Chase Claypool.
Yeah, I think it's really good that they gave him a chance to win the bet with his brother next year. So that would be.
I would not make that bet a second time if I'm EQ. I mean, the Lions are on an upward escalator, and the Bears have a long way to go to catch up. If I'm EQ, I say, hey, Amon-Ra, let's just take this year off.
Last thing, quickly, Chase Claypool. What'd you make of his? I don't want to call it an apology because it was more explanation.
What I like about it is that the intent is what I want out of Bears players in the locker room. And that's, let's not accept losing and high-level failure so quickly. And he was upset in the second half of that Lions game that the Bears weren't putting up a fight and seemed to be okay with it with every 3 and out that they went back to the sideline with. What I hate about it is Chase Claypool's played a handful of games and hasn't had 20 catches as a Chicago Bear. He hasn't earned his voice or his leadership torch in this locker room yet. And so it's not his place or his time to do that. I love that it illuminated another moment where Justin Fields could go be the forefront leader of this football team and say, bro, calm down. This is not the way we channel our passion. This is not the way we channel our emotions.
Right.
Great handling it by Justin Fields. I love what Chase Claypool wants to be about. You got to earn it. You got to earn it before you start becoming the guy that's doing those types of things. Listen,
because if you have a track record for being immature, you don't want to add another line to your resume. The Bears
put up with it from Brandon Marshall for a long period of time, but Brandon Marshall will go out and get you 105 catches and 1,400 yards. You know what I mean? Like that's when you can put up with that. Man, you got to produce before you earn the right to kind of want to put yourself up on that chest puffed, I'm going to be the spark here kind of guy. Earn it, man. Earn it.
I agree with you. I that was the first thought, and I think that will be our last one here on the Take the North podcast this time, because this has been, wide-ranging. A lot of stuff we got to, Dan. It was worth going a little bit extra here, and we will look forward to Sunday at Soldier Field.
Damar Hamlin, Justin Fields, Virginia McCaskey, Hub, Devin Hester. I mean, we're I mean, this might be our best and most thorough episode yet. And to do that on the Friday of Week 18 for a 14-loss football team, that's a victory here for Take the North.
Download, listen, and subscribe to Take the North podcast. You can watch us on the Odyssey YouTube channel, also the 670 The Score YouTube channel. We'll be back Sunday night, or maybe Sunday late afternoon, depending on how the game goes, how fast it is. Bears and Vikings on the lakefront. For Dan Wiederer and Adam Studzinski, I'm David Haugh. Thank you for listening and watching the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.